So today we're going to talk about some really eye-opening metrics that you can measure your stores by. And we're going to dive right into that. There are a lot of stuff to cover today. And so by the end of this session, we'll hope to kind of maybe change the way you ask questions or how you think about the metrics that you're trying to measure, and talk about what are the top actionable metrics that we would like to track versus what some of us are tracking or were tracking up until the last couple of years. And then the second question that we'll cover is, how does your store perform compared to the other stores? And for that, we created a really cool benchmark for you. There's a lot of work that went to that, and we'll share it today as well.
And we know that you don't have lots of resources, you don't have too much time, you don't have developers' resources, so we're also going to show you how to do it easily and how in like less than 1 hour you can create all these metrics.
All right, so before we kind of really dive into it, hi, my name is Ophir. I'm a VP of product at Oribi. Prior to that, I was managing marketing teams, and I really joined Oribi because I really felt I wanted to build the perfect marketing analytics tools that I would wanted to use in my previous roles in marketing. And with me, I have Iris, the CEO and founder of Oribi.
Hi, so I'm Iris. I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is my third company. I've always led the marketing and product. I really, really love simple products, good products that people love using. And I think the primary reason that I started Oribi was because I found it so challenging when I manage marketing teams to answer very simple questions. And I always felt that I spent so much time just creating the data and analyzing the reports, and I wanted to create a simple analytics tool. Okay, so I think that something that I find very interesting is that there are so many marketing apps. So if you need to decide how to do email marketing or how to advertise or how to use even like landing pages or pop-ups, you have millions of options, but you have so very few options to how to analyze it. So usually everything like ends up to Google Analytics. You're probably using Google Analytics as well, or Shopify dashboard that is kind of like the same, like a slim version of Google Analytics, and everything is around the same concept. And I find it very interesting that while the marketing world evolved so much, we're still using the same concept to analyze it. So let's talk a bit about Google Analytics. So Google Analytics was created 20 years ago, and just a reminder of how our world looked like 20 years ago. So most of us used this Nokia phone, and the iPod was released actually like 1 year later after Google Analytics. The most popular computer game was The Sims. And what I find very interesting is that today we're not using a better Nokia. So we don't have like a Nokia with a nicer design or with more features, and we don't listen to music with like a more sophisticated iPod. The technology has advanced, and therefore we created new concept. There is smartphone. We do things differently, as opposed to the way we still see Google Analytics. So you're probably using Google Analytics for like 5 years, 10 years, maybe even more, and it's still kind of the same. There are new features. It looks nicer, but the main concept is the same. So as I mentioned, this is like a nicer Nokia. It's not a smartphone. And I think what really stands behind the concept of Google Analytics is to analyze your website. So 20 years ago, the website wasn't the main business. It was where you read content, where you hear about the company, but it wasn't the main place where the transactions happened. And for all of you that own like online stores, this is your business. It's not about the website. And with Google Analytics, most of the main question that you see is like, how many people visited my website, where they're from, what is the bounce rate, how much time did they spend on the website. And these are not the questions that you're asking today. And these are not the questions that you're being measured on. So I guess most of you are being measured on number of leads, how you help to generate more sales, and not on the time on site.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's kind of, we had the tools that we had, and so we started asking questions that they knew how to answer, right? But then we kind of became so, I don't know, entangled with those questions that we didn't stop to think, hey, the world has changed, our business changed, and our business needs have changed. And so what are the questions that we want to ask, not what are the questions that our tools can answer, right?
Yeah, I think that Google Analytics is so basic that in a way it programmed us to think in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So what we want to emphasize today is that even though all of us love being data-driven, this is not the main focus. Like, we want to be sales-driven. We want to optimize the budget and the marketing activities to drive more sales. And these are the questions that we want to ask. So it's not about the basic parameters of the website. And over here, we really want to differentiate between web analytics, which is more about the flow of the web, which is nice, and marketing analytics, which is the main thing that you should look at. And this is more about understanding how every dollar on your budget, how every hour that you spend translates to sales. And the questions are not longer about how people are using the website, but more business-oriented and sales-oriented questions. And today we're going to show you a sample of 3 quick questions and how to answer them better and how to understand where you're failing. So the first one is going to be where we're losing our shop visitors today. So for most of you, probably like 98 or 99% of the visitors that visit the website don't end up buying. So how to understand it better. The second question is about how each one of my marketing channels is performing. So you work so hard on social media and advertising and SEO, and to understand it better. And how to convert more users into customers.
Right, and for each of those questions, what we'll do is we'll start by looking at how you can look at them and how you can answer those questions for yourselves. But what we would also like to do is to show you how you compare with other companies in your industry.
Definitely. Okay, so a great asset that we're going to share with you today is a benchmark report that we created at Oribi. So I would say probably like the most important benchmark is you're comparing your website to yourself and see how you're able to optimize it. But I think that benchmarks are very important. So in many cases, what I found when I started working with e-commerce customers is that many of them told me, okay, so like 1% of the users that visit my website buy. Is it good? Is it bad? Should it be like 5%? Should it be 10%? Or is it like a great metric? And I found it very interesting that we were looking for a long time for a good benchmark, and all we found is like surveys, which are based on a very small sampling, and we didn't feel that there was like an accurate benchmark. So what we've done, we actually took like a few thousand of Oribi customers, and we tracked their visitors. So for a few weeks this year, we tracked over 5 million visitors. So just think about it, 5 million people that entered e-commerce sites and were looking for a certain product or didn't. And we collected all their data, how many times they arrived to the website, how long did it take them to buy, how many products they bought, and then we created this benchmark. So what you can see today is actually based on like data of 5 million users, so it's much more accurate than most of the surveys. And you can download the full report with this tiny URL. So you can see it's tinyurl.com/YYBRUGVS. And we're also going to share it at the end of this presentation, and we're going to send it over by email, so you will have this link. If you're watching this webinar on YouTube, if you're watching the recorded version, you can see it on the comments.
All right, let's jump right into the first question, right? Where are we losing our shops visitors? And I think that's a key business question. And as Iris mentioned earlier, that's a really interesting question that a lot of e-commerce shops ask themselves. But also, let's start with how you compare with the rest of the industry. So I think the interesting part right here, and you can see it, we had 4 different industries: lifestyle, fashion, medical, and wholesale. And as Iris mentioned earlier, let's say I know that I'm at 1.1%. Is it good? Is it bad? How do I compare with other companies, right? So the first immediate action item for you today is just find out how your shop compares to the benchmark. Now, in all cases, you'll have that data, that basic data, on Google Analytics. And by the way, when we're talking about conversion rate right now, we're talking about website visits or shop visits, conversion to orders, to the people that ended up buying. And so understand where you stand. But that's just the first stage. And what I'd like to show today is how we in Oribi, and our customers are using Oribi to kind of find out some of those data points and not only understand how we compare with other companies, but also kind of dive deeper to see if we need to improve things and why and how we can improve them. And so this is our Oribi dashboard for e-commerce.
By the way, Ophir, do you want to mention what Oribi is? I think that some of the people
yes,
are doing
it
customers, but some of them don't know Oribi at all.
Of course. So Oribi is a marketing analytics tools for e-commerce shops, and our goal is to make the business impact questions key and show them in a simple way, in an action-oriented way, not just reports on reports on reports, but things you can actually take and do something with, and that's kind of our key focus. Yes, thank you, Iris.
And by the way, I'm not sure if you mentioned, but just to be clear, the conversion rate means out of all the people that visited your website, how many people ended up buying?
Buying, exactly. So in this case, right, you can see the dashboard here. This is naturally, we didn't want to share our customers' data, and so this is a dashboard that we created. And so you can see here, in this case, we're looking at a clothing shop, online clothing shop, and we can see the conversion rate is 1.1%. And if we look again at the benchmark, we see that in fashion, our benchmark should be 2% conversion rate. So meaning out of the people that have visited my website, 2% should have converted. And I'm at 1.1%. So I'm below industry standard, which is, okay, that's nice. Now I understand. But it's kind of like saying your shop isn't good enough. How can I improve? What do I need to do? So in order to do that, first of all, once we understood that we were below the benchmark, now let's start kind of diving deeper into what we can do. And to do that, what we want to do first is we want to look at our funnel, right? Our visitors of our shop go through different stages before they end up buying. In this case, this is a very basic funnel out of all the people that visited, how many added to their cart, how many clicked on checkout, and how many ended up buying, right? And this is for fashion industry as an example, right? This is, by the way, the benchmark from our benchmark report, right? And now that we can see the benchmark report, let's see how my site compares to that. So before we do that, let's see how we can build funnels, right? So if we go to Oribi, and this is the live version of Oribi, by the way, this is not an e-commerce shop, but I wanted to share this to show how easily it is to build funnels, right? So if we go to Oribi, Oribi automatically tracks and collects any event and everything that happens on my e-commerce shop or website. So any clicks, any web page visits, any actions that my users take, it automatically collects those and groups them together. So building funnels should be very easy for me. I want to start my funnel with visits, so let's start with all the people that have visited my page, right? And then in Oribi's case, we want to go to the pricing page because we know a lot of our visitors go to the pricing page and then end up purchasing Oribi. But as I mentioned, Oribi doesn't only track visits, it tracks all the button clicks automatically. So in this case, let me try and see build a funnel of all the people that have visited my website, then went to the pricing page, then tried the free trial or clicked on the free trial. And what Oribi will show me right here is the funnel. And so building funnels can be very easy, but that's just the first part, right?
Yeah, I also want to add that we used to think, and that's again of like the way we're being programmed by Google Analytics, the funnel for just like the flow between pages. But over here, you can easily define all the buttons. You can create groups of buttons. You can create all the links that send to external links, like all the links that send you to a paper or somewhere else, and groups of pages and so on. So you can build more advanced funnels, not only the add to cart, checkout, and the purchase, but also like lots of steps in between.
Yeah, and you can also basically filter the funnels. So you can say, show me this funnel. Now start breaking it down based on the channel. Show me that funnel only for YouTube and Facebook, only for Google paid, right? Only for paid channels versus organic channels. I can start breaking it down and understand how each channel performs in terms of the flow. And that's what
what we're trying to emphasize today is to start asking why and more whys until you get to the weakest link and understand really the place where you lose visitors. So it might be because of like a certain platform, like mobile visitors. It can be that visitors coming from Facebook tend to drop. And it can be visitors that visit a certain page and so on. So it's not about seeing just like the end results, but what we're showing right now is to start asking more and more questions. So we had the conversion rates and we built a funnel. Now we're creating filters on it so we can see how each platform behaves, how each channels behaves, and so on. And we will show you more questions that we can ask about our funnel.
Yeah, so let's go back to our shop, to our example shop, right? We saw here that the conversion rate was 11%, right? If we look at the industry standard, we see that all visits to add to cart needs to be around 11%. If we're looking at our online shop, it seems like all visits to add to cart is only 7%. Okay, so we're below industry standard. Well, what does it mean? How can we kind of dive deeper into that? So let's go into funnels and let's see this funnel. So a few things that I can do right now. I understand that I have a weak point between all visits and add to cart, but this is a very high level. A lot of things can happen between all visits and add to cart. So the next stage for me would be just to add more levels that might be happening between all visits and add to cart and understand exactly where in that flow I'm losing my visitors. So what I did was I just created another funnel, right, where I just added all the collections pages. So all the people that have visited my website and then visit my collections pages, or basically looked at products that we're selling and then added to cart. So I can see that my homepage is converting pretty well to the collection pages, right? A lot of the people that visit my homepage are converting pretty well to the collections page. It doesn't seem like the leak is there, right? But if I look deeper, I see that from my collections pages to my add to cart, there's a slight decrease, so 6%, which is something I want to look at. But again, that's very high level. So let's start by building secondary funnels. So what I mean by this is I have many different types of collection pages. I have different types of products that I'm selling. I have different categories. Let's start breaking those down and comparing the funnels and seeing if I have anything that's not performing as I expect it to be, right? So what I would do here is I would just basically break it down into different funnels. In this case, I have my on sale, I have my women's clothing, and I have my menswear. So what I did was I looked at all my collection pages and broke it down based on my category to see if I have a category that's underperforming. So I can see that the conversion rate in on sale is 15%. That's pretty good. In women's clothing, it's 13%, still above average. When I see it here, I can see that the collections on the menswear pages only converting around 7%, right? That's below average, and that's not good. This is something that I would probably want to understand. So here we saw kind of how to look at it from a 1.1% conversion rate of my total website to really zooming in on where the issue is. So this is really critical. And so
I would say that that's something that we see a lot with our customers, that sometimes their landing pages or like single product pages are great and converts very well, but the catalog doesn't look good and they're losing customers, or customers that land on a specific page don't convert. And that's something that like building a more advanced funnels and not just the usual one that you used to see is something that will really help you to understand where to focus on.
Yeah, and I think like Aris mentioned, it's like always keep asking the why. Why this? And it will help you kind of break down those funnels into micro funnels, into smaller funnels, until you get, all right, this is where I'm losing my customers. And so your action item for today is build your funnels and find the leaks in your funnels. Find kind of the weakest link that is kind of a low-hanging fruit that you can improve. So now I understand I have an issue with menswear. But how can I understand or learn why people are dropping off there, right? I can try different things, and I can try and improve that page, but let's try and see if we can kind of dig even deeper to understand why people are dropping off. Here, by the way, you see those side by side just to see that menswear, again, is lower than the rest. And so what we usually do and what we usually advise our customers to do is once you understood why people are dropping, start looking at individual journeys. So it's great when we have the aggregated data, and that's kind of, it's really from a very high level to start zooming in until we get to kind of the customer. And in this case, Oribi can track all the journey of the customers throughout their sessions. So they visited, they did something, and then they ended up buying. Or they came from Facebook, then they left, then they came through email, then they ended up buying. And so
I think that we're so used to seeing aggregated data, and I do think it's right. I do think that when you have so many visitors, it's really important to see the high-level numbers. But there's something really magical about really getting into the shoes of your customers, understanding exactly which one of them, like what the journey is, to which pages they visited, how long they stayed in each one of them. And with Oribi, you can either like search by email or just enter specific visitors and see how many people, and see exactly what they've done, each step, and to really understand them, cross-session, cross-device.
Right, and in this example, right, let's look at the journey of this customer that came from Facebook, right? This is how it looks like in Oribi, the visitor journey. Let's look at this visitor that came from Facebook, then went to the menswear page, right, which is what we saw in the funnel. But then what happened was this company recently posted a new blog post that's kind of casual looks for the winter. And we can see here that the user, instead of adding things to cart, probably saw a link to the blog on one of the products pages and just went onto the blog. So our initial kind of optimization phase will probably be, seems like the blog is pretty interesting, but let's remove the link to the blog from the men's page, or the men's collection page, to make sure people actually add items to their cart instead of leaving our website. So this is something that can be a very low-hanging fruit that can really dramatically impact how we optimize our website. All right, moving on to question number 2. How are each of my marketing channels performing? And I think this is a key question, because when we think about performance of marketing channels, we usually think about the bottom line. And let's start with the bottom line. So this is from the benchmark, right? We can see here which channels are most effective for most of the e-commerce companies that took part in the benchmark, right? But I think the key part here is that when we usually think about, all right, so how many channels brought sales? But there are a lot of stages that you go through before you get to the sale. And so what I think is really critical here is to understand not only how channels are performing in getting people to order, but also how are channels performing in getting people to add to cart. How are channels performing in getting people that are highly engaged in my website, even if they didn't end up buying in this specific instance. And so diving deeper into that and digging deeper into that is critical. So you want to start with the sale. That's important. You want to make sure the channels that you're investing in are converting, but don't end there. There are a lot of stages on the way that can really be impactful for your website.
Yeah, like one point that we really want to highlight today is how important it is to optimize the conversion rate. So let's say, for example, that 1% of your Instagram visitors end up buying. It's probably going to be much easier to work on the conversion rate and increase it to 2% rather than doubling the traffic coming from Instagram. So I think it's mainly about understanding exactly where do you lose them, from which, what are the winning ads or pictures or posts, and really increasing the conversion rate. And that's what we showed you earlier. So you can see, of course, that Google Organic is going to convert better than social media, for example. You can see the benchmark, but you can always optimize them and focus on it instead of bringing more and more traffic.
Yeah, so in this case, and so what I mentioned earlier, Oribi automatically tracks everything. So you can basically, and here you can see we're tracking add to cart. That's what the customer add to cart, checkout, and choose size, outfit size. But you can basically track anything that you want and also do that retroactively. And for any of those actions, the key actions or the key stages that you think people take on their way to purchasing, you can get all their data and naturally the funnels. But what's also interesting is you can see the channel breakdown, not only how many visitors in this case added to their carts, or how many visitors visited my collections pages, or how many visitors chose the size of the outfit, but also the conversion rate for each channel. And I think this is really important, right? So for example, we can see here that although Google Paid has brought us 112 people, the conversion rates of people that came from Google Paid to add to carts, or people that actually added items to their cart, is 1.4%, whereas Instagram brought fewer people, but the conversion rate there is pretty significant. It's 5%. So what we will probably want to do, and what this tells us, is maybe you should invest more in Instagram, that being organic or paid. Maybe you should invest more in Instagram because that seems to be converting pretty well for you. So this is critical insight. And what you would want to do is you would want to test it. You want to naturally check conversion rates to orders, right? But what you also want to do is you want to check the conversion rate to any stage of the funnel. So choose 2 or 3 critical actions and events and activities that your customers go through, and understand the conversion rate of your platforms compared to those. So choose the 3 desired actions and start looking at the conversion rate of each channel and which channels actually contribute most to those. All right, moving on to question number 3. How can we convert more users into customers? And I think that's an interesting question. We kind of touched on it a little in question number 1. What I wanted to show in this session is multi-visits. In a lot of cases, the journey of a customer is not just visiting your website and making a purchase. They come from Facebook and then they leave, and then you send them an email, then they come back, then they leave, and then they see an ad, a retargeting ad or something you posted on social, and then they come back and purchase that item, right? So we wanted to see a breakdown in the benchmark that we created. We wanted to see a breakdown of the visits. When do people usually visit, right?
By the way, I do want to add that this is like a tough metric to understand, like what is good or bad, because you can say if I do want most of the visitors to buy on the first visit, but if I have 100% of the visitors that buy on the first visit, it means that I'm not doing a good job with retargeting and with creating more content and with bringing back visitors that didn't buy. So I would say that this benchmark is important to understand, because if, for example, you have only 20% that buy on the first session, you can probably do a better job over there. But I would say that you should benchmark it against yourself and see how you can improve in each category and to increase the conversion rate. But I think it's critical to understand this flow, because today you do need to work really hard for customers to buy, for visitors to buy, to bring them back, to create content, to create better ads, and to create this flow.
And I think it's also a critical question of understanding where to invest your budget in terms of those sessions, and we'll talk about that in a second. So the action item for you is to find out when your customers are most likely to make a purchase. Is it on the first visit? Is it on the second visit? And as Iris mentioned earlier, it's not just comparing yourself against the benchmark, it's actually comparing yourself against yourself and seeing how you can improve over time. And so I showed you earlier the ability to kind of look at add to cart and understand the conversion rate of each channel. What you can also see here is you can see the conversion rates of sessions. In this case, conversion rates to add to cart, but you can do that to purchases. Again, you can do that to any event because Oribi automatically tracks all of them. And so in this case, we can see that 61% made the first purchase, right? So your first kind of action item is to really understand how you can improve that, and you can see the different values, the order values for these orders, right? So you might, some companies might see that second time and third time visitors usually have higher spend, right? Which means I want to invest more in email marketing. I want to get more people to come back to my website versus just the first purchase. And this is something we're seeing very often. And so to do that, we want to understand what brings people and what helps us get our conversions. But as I mentioned earlier, the path is not always the simple path. And we want to make sure we give credit to all the channels that contribute. So for example, first touch, if we kind of go and say, let's look at where people came from, email marketing will never be there because we don't have the emails of our customers, and so we don't send them emails on the first touch. We will only be able to send them emails on the second and third touches, right? And so being able to give credit to the channels that deserve quote-unquote credit is critical. And what you can see here is this is kind of how we measure this in Oribi. And we look at the first touch, but we also look at the assisted touch and the last touch. And that gives us a more complete picture and understanding of, all right, so let's say we get more budget tomorrow. Where should we invest it? Great, we get first touch Google paid, but we're seeing email is doing pretty nice. Facebook is doing pretty nice on the second touch, meaning retargeting ads and different sorts of specific product-oriented ads, and we might want to invest in that. And let me show you how it looks like in Oribi. We kind of call it the attribution feature. And in Oribi, as I mentioned, because this is not an e-commerce shop, we'll look at people that actually signed up or clicked on sign up, right? And what this will show me is will show me how many people signed up on their first visit and which channel contributed to that. But let's look at the multi-touch and understand how each channel contributes. So we can see here direct is number one, but YouTube is doing pretty well for us on all three aspects, on all three fronts. Google Organic is doing pretty well. So we can kind of see how visitors interact with our material and know where to spend our budget on, retargeting ads and targeted audiences. So this is something that's kind of really important, understanding, all right, so we have our budget and we have our visitors, but how can we really optimize the funnel throughout?
Yeah, I just want to add that Ofri didn't demo it, but we do also have like an attribution view by revenue. So you can easily see, for example, if you generated like $1,000 from YouTube, then how much Facebook helped. So you can really attribute the revenue in a more correct way.
Exactly. And so those are kind of the three questions that we wanted to kind of cover, right? So some of the takeaways before we move to the Q&A part of the session. So first of all, focus on the business metrics and not on bounce rate and not on kind of just visitors. How are we doing compared to other similar companies, and where's the leak? Always look at where can I improve, where's the lowest hanging fruit. Second thing is deep dive by breaking it down and adding more and more levels and layers of data until it kind of hits you, oh, this is it, as we saw here. And the third part, and I think that's key, keep optimizing. There's never enough optimization. You can always improve, and even if you improve by 0.5%, that has a dramatic impact, can have a dramatic impact on your bottom line. All right.
Okay.
On the right side of your screen, by the way, you can schedule a session with one of our conversion experts. So they can show you how to do that on your own e-commerce shop. So feel free to schedule that.
Yeah, these are people that work with like thousands of e-commerce websites. They know the flow really well. They can really help you to pinpoint the place that you're failing at right now. So you can either use like the chat here. You can enter Oribi, sign up, install, and schedule a demo, or just reply to one of our emails. You can also download the full benchmark report with this tiny URL. We're also going to send it over by email. Over there you can see all the benchmarks, comparing all the stats to other sites within your category. And feel free to ask questions now.
Perfect. Let's start with the Q&A session. Yes, first order of business. Yes, this session is being recorded, and we will send you the recording. So if you kind of joined later, no worries. We'll send you the recording after the session. So that's on that. We have a few Shopify-related questions. Let's kind of bucket them together. First one, do you have a Shopify plugin? And then the second one is, how's Oribi different or better than Shopify Analytics?
Okay, so first of all, we have a Shopify plugin. It's not listed yet. It will be soon. But if you're going to look on the marketplace, like the App Store of Shopify, you won't find it. But if you're going to enter Oribi, start the onboarding, you will be directed to the plugin. By the way, the plugin will pull all of the data from Shopify, will help you connect to data coming from Facebook and Google, so you can see like all the budget from there, and it will also pull all the emails of users from your website, and then you can look for certain people and see what they've done. As for what is different from Shopify, so as I mentioned, see that Shopify Analytics is very basic. You can see like how many sales you got from each channel, but that's about it. And what we're going to with Oribi, first of all, you can create much more data easily. So you don't need to use developers. You can track things like webinars, like email campaigns, all types of paid campaigns, and to actually correlate them with more events, more data on the website, and have like the business questions being answered. It's not about, as we mentioned, it's not about the raw data. It's about it's really about the sales-driven questions and to answer this.
All right, another question. Our booking tool is on a different domain. Can you track cross-domain traffic with Oribi? So the short answer is yes. So Oribi works on all of, we have a lot of customers doing that. So you have multi-domains, and you said you have subdomains and all those, and you can basically build funnels that are cross-domain. You can see the traffic, how it kind of flows from your blog to your website, back to your blog, back to your website, and then to the purchase. So Oribi does that, and as I showed you how to build the funnels, you can do that for multi-domain, cross-domain traffic as well. Iris, another question. We have time for a couple more questions. All right, we have a lot of custom events we've set up with Google Analytics. Can we use them in Oribi?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. Once you add Oribi to your website, you can import all the events that you define on Google and Facebook. I do want to mention that Oribi works very well with Google and Facebook, both for importing all the data, but also to export data. So if, for example, you define different events like people that use the coupon, people that bought a specific product, people that signed up to updates, you can also send it over to Google and Facebook, and then you can use it to optimize your campaigns, analyze other data better. So the entire flow between Google, Facebook, and Oribi works very well.
All right, and we have a bunch more questions, but unfortunately that's kind of all the time that we have. So if you have asked a question, we have probably answered to you on the chat, and if not, we'll reach out to you and give you more answers as based on the question that you asked. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Iris, and take care. Have a great rest of your day.